Ta-da! Here I am, kids. I think we're live. I think you can hear me okay. Honestly, don't know. I've, unlike other broadcasts I've done, put zero effort into this one, so we're gonna figure this out together. Welcome, everyone, to Cult of Color, a show dedicated to the art of color grading. I see I have two of you currently, so welcome. And yeah, there's a link down in the description where you can download a video I shot today, which is pretty cool, and we're gonna go through it together. I'm gonna try to go slowly through it because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Oh good, you can see me. Fantastic. I'm glad for that. I can see me also. I think, as I said in the chat, I've actually been doing broadcasting for quite a long time, so I'm not too confused by this. I just pretend to be a new guy. It's just I didn't do any graphics or anything ahead of time, like lower thirds graphics and intro and stuff that I usually do. If anybody, any of you guys have ever seen my FPV After Dark show, then you kind of get an idea what the production quality I prefer is. Also, just as an FYI, so we're going to be doing a screen share today, obviously, but I'm not going to crank my stuff down to 1080. We're staying at 4K, and this stream is going to be 4K, 60 frames per second. So be sure to hit that little gear icon, crank up your resolution, and full screen this bad boy when we start getting into it if you can. If you're just going to watch, if not, put it off to the side and work on your own, work on the video on your own, unless you have multiple monitors and all that stuff. I have a little monitor down here where I can see chat. That's why I keep looking down. So I'm not like, oh, I'm so sad, I don't want to do anything. So yeah, here we are, first stream. I think I'm going to do this every other week. I don't think I had any submissions. In fact, let me check real quick here. I gotta grab this, pull it up here. Let's go to Gmail. Oh, yeah, and I can't, fuck. Gotta look at my phone. Whatever. No, I don't think I got any submissions. I think the biggest reason was I didn't make a huge push on getting the word out. Like I posted on a couple of Discords and such, and it's kind of unconventional to take email submissions as opposed to standing up a Discord server, but how many Discord servers are you guys members of? Probably more than a few, right? So I kind of didn't want to add to that pile. I did have a Discord for FPV After Dark. And your internet speed won't keep up for 4K 60. Well, it's only 25 megabit that I'm uploading, so it might be less than that you would be consuming. So I would maybe give it a try. Still sit in the drive-thru line at McDonald's. Oh, yeah, that could do it. So you won't be doing any color grading in the drive-thru line at McDonald's, which is cool. Used to pump my production quality up so high, but it made too much for me, and I settled into my noob status. Haha. Yeah, I'm pretty anal about some things. Something that I can't just let go of, and I think upstream bandwidth and resolution, frame rate are probably some of my tops. YouTube doesn't like what I like to give it. I like to give it 100 megabit. YouTube shits the bed when I do that. Yes, DRX Film says, wait, submissions. Can you submit O3 footage? Yes, you can submit O3 footage. Didn't know. See, so this is really my failing, right? It's really my failing. I didn't put a... Yeah, I did post in your Discord, actually. But I was so kind of blasé about it. And it was also in the announcement video that I had made a few weeks ago. That was kind of open-ended because I wasn't sure when I was going to start this. So yeah, I think maybe I'll probably break down and just get a Discord going. That's what everyone's used to. It's much easier to just paste a link in a Discord than it is to open up an email. Nobody sends email anymore. I don't send email. I receive email, but if I can help it, I don't want to send email. So I think other people are probably in the same boat, and I should probably get off my lazy ass and do a Discord. So yeah. Yes, we do take submissions. It can either be something that's completely finished that you just want to show off, or it can be something you want some help with, something that's halfway finished, or it can be raw footage and we can work through it together. Tonight, I've actually supplied the raw footage that we can work through together. And that is the straight off the GoPro file from earlier today, straight off my Hero 12. And we're going to go through that right quick here and in a hurry. So let's see. Right, I'm looking at the wrong thing. No, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's go here. Whoop. Okay, so just ignore the vMix window. So this is the software I use for broadcasting, which is a little different than what most people are used to. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. I'll minimize it. We're going to go ahead and turn the music off. Boop. And then I'll minimize. Boop. Oh, I don't like it minimized. I'm going to have to... All right, well, you just gotta I'm just going to have to trust that you can see me after I minimize it. So... all right, so I've got 4 files here. We're just going to go ahead and play through them to make things more consumable. Generally, we'll play through Gyroflow so you can kind of get a better idea. And I've got a pretty beefy machine. I don't know how well it's going to do Gyroflow and DaVinci Resolve while I'm streaming. So, yeah, maybe. I'll give you mod you can ping. I'll submit now. Next time, post image. Okay, yeah. So you don't want to run a separate Discord. Yeah, I know. I might, because I might integrate it with Patreon and shit like that. So give people little badges or whatever. You know how that FOMO works. So just kind of give you an idea. Don't think you're going to hear the desktop audio, but here is what it looks like. I'm just mute it just in case. Here's what it looks like straight off the GoPro. 8x7. 5.3K, and the vertical resolution is really what we're more concerned about here. So you look at the vertical resolution, 46 by 48 pixels. So if we turn this into 4K, we're going to just like throw a bunch of stuff away. For brevity tonight, we are going to just throw it away. We are just going to go straight to 3840 by 2160, which is fine. But this is essentially... Those of you who thought I was like super smooth at flying, this is what it looks like straight off the GoPro. This is the X8. So went to the beach of the Great Lakes and did some flying around. Haven't taken the X8 up in a little while, so you can see it's a little bit shaky. Actually, I think the only reason why this looks smooth is because the X8 is so damn heavy. Yeah, I don't know. You guys, can you hear that? I don't think you can. If you can, that'd be neat. I don't know. Oh wait, you know what? You might. If I do this, wait, does this have audio? No, it doesn't have audio. Okay, whatever. So you guys probably can't hear that then. So yeah, this is what it looks like, and now what we'll do is we'll drop that same file onto Gyroflow, and I have to pick my preset. I picked since there is no Hero 12 preset, and the Hero 12 is exactly the same as the Hero 11, we just use this Hero 11 preset. Now we got 16 by 9, and I'll fast forward to right about where I take off, and we'll go over all this shit here in a minute and kind of give you an idea of how I like to set my stuff up. But this is essentially what it'll look like after I... Oh, let me just mute that. This is essentially what it'll look like after running through Gyroflow. So it takes a lot of little bumps, a lot of the kind of shaky hands, the wind wobbles, takes that stuff out, but it doesn't do too much to my actual flying. It's not like real steady, which makes it almost nauseating. Audio and video good, Max Air 420 says. Thanks, appreciate it, dude. So yeah, I had a fun time at the beach today. It looks rather flat. This is GP log, which is why the colors look all flat and gooey and mushy. I guarantee you there's a lot of information in there. We're going to dig some of that out today. And I did a fun thing. So great thing about Gyroflow while it's playing. Let me just make this bigger so I can... Just drop another file on it and hit play. So I'll move up to where I almost take off. Boop. I think this is where I Okay, so I didn't go high for this one. Or did I? Did I go high? I did go high. Yeah, I wanted to get up there. My wife was landed at the time, so I knew we weren't going to run into each other. And I actually went a little too high, but that's just for you guys to know. Don't tell anybody. I know I just put it out on the internet, but it is what it is. And there's Lake Michigan, looking all pretty. I'm circling around. There's some people on the beach. Wasn't too bad today. It's about 50 degrees. A little chilly with the wind, but the wind did calm down a bit. And coming back in to surf on those trees. See how close I get to them this time. Not too close. Not too bad. I do like getting close to the trees, but having a bottom set of rotors does make it a little bit more complex. So with a set of rotors that are lower than my point of view, I gotta be mindful of that. And then number 26. Oh, wait. I gotta show you this. So I did this punch up with the X8, and that thing has like airtime for days. Okay, so like it just floats. You can see the gyro data there. Boop, flip, float. Almost like slow motion, doesn't it? Because it has so much momentum when I'm going up that it keeps going up for a little while after I pull back on the throttle. So I get so much extra time, some air time. But yeah, I mostly just wanted to screw with these trees, stay away from the people, avoid all the Karens because this thing is ridiculously loud. Anybody who's downloaded the file and played it probably knows it's got some pretty decent audio on there. It's really pretty gnarly sound, but it is quite loud in person and can frighten the small children and the faint of heart and the weak of mind. So got to use it sparingly in locations where nobody can really point a finger at me. So the file we're working with today, number 24, that unfortunate lady on there. What I like to do when I work with flights in GyroFlow, like I could export this entire thing, and sometimes I will if like there's talking or something that I'm interested in. But generally speaking, I will just set my in and out right at the beginning before like I arm, for instance, and then my out will be after I land. And that way it saves a little bit of processing time. And then I actually want to change this. I have this set to be persistent, so I need to save that where it belongs. And we're not doing DNX. So normally for my high res stuff, I'll do DNX HR. This actually got set down. I use 444 12-bit in 8K, and what that does, it makes the corner pixels that get stretched out, make sure I capture those as detailed as possible. So we're not going to do that today because I don't have that kind of time. It's about 15 minutes for like a clip like this under the best settings. Right now my machine's already loaded, so we're just going to do regular old 4K. 4K. And we are going to do H.265 because it's 10-bit and I want to maintain my 10-bit, and then we have to drop this down so like 200, just so long as it's more than the source. So the source was an average of 123.55 megabit per second. So I want it generally just higher. So 200 megabits good enough for government work. Sometimes 300 if I want to use H.265 or HEVC for 8K 444, then I will crank that up to 600, but it has to be that has to be added to it. We actually want to remove that because we want to use the default profile. And up here, if you've watched my tutorial on the GyroFlow overview, 150 millisecond smoothing window is kind of my default. I do like to take my max smoothness up to 2 seconds instead of 1 second. That'll add additional smoothing to footage that has almost no gyro deviation. Kind of gives it almost a locked-in feel when it's applicable. And then my max smoothness at high velocity is 100 milliseconds. So that means that when I do things like a juicy flick, for instance, which I suck at, let's just be honest, I'm not a freestyle pilot. I'm gonna do a juicy flick. it doesn't like zoom in ahead of time and try to compensate for that juicy flick. It knows that I'm going to spin super fast and it just lets it happen, then kind of recaptures the stabilization after that movement. Super helpful if you're a freestyle pilot. You kind of want to make sure it doesn't look like your stabilizer footage. The maximum smoothness at high velocity, you can set that one lower and lower. If you set it higher, it's going to ignore more, right? So you want to keep it lower than your main smoothest pass. Otherwise, I don't know what might happen. The world might end. 100 milliseconds or 1/10 of a second is probably good enough for most people. Zooming speed is 1 second. Use dynamic zooming, hit advance, and by default, it's going to be a Gaussian filter. I like to do envelope follower, and despite the name envelope follower, it's the Gaussian filter that follows the motion, and the envelope follower will start sliding the image ahead of time before that lateral motion or whatever motion that requires that zoom in. It'll move it ahead of time. So there's less of a rushing feeling that you get with like real steady, for instance. Don't use rolling shutter correction. It's built into the GoPro file for this. And then, like I said earlier, we're just doing 3840 by 2160, 200 megabits. And because this is the X8, I like to export the audio because the microphones sound great on the X8, but in the case for my 5-inch, they sound like effervescent shit stain, so I don't like to keep the audio from that. And yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and hit export here and see if my computer doesn't explode. So yeah, it looks like I'm going to survive. I don't know if any of this is going to make my stream suffer or not. So if it starts skipping or something like that, you know what happened. I did it to myself. And sorry in advance. But this is it's not too bad. Could be faster. But I am streaming. So usually this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to like 110 frames per second. But yeah, now we gotta wait. So, how's everyone's weekend? Anybody do anything cool? Get out and fly? You know, throw a GoPro in the air, put a GoPro in a tennis ball, win $1 million bucks? Let me know in the chat. Has anybody downloaded the footage and is going to do the grading with me? That's another thing I'm curious about. Yes, you. I think you're talking about lens. Are you talking about the distortion correction or rolling shutter correction? They're DRX films. You don't need it. The rolling shutter correction is more for cameras with larger sensors. The O3 does not have a big sensor, neither does a GoPro. So you're not going to get much of a rolling shutter effect, even if it is a rolling shutter scan and not a global shutter. So I wouldn't worry about it unless you know the actual, if you know the actual readout time. Because one of the things when you turn this on, you need to know the frame readout time, and you need to know, is it reading from the bottom of the frame or from the top of the frame? So you can find that documentation for some things, but like I said, for small sensors, it's really not. It's not a problem that you need to worry about. Tiger for Life FPV says, I have downloaded the footage, trying to catch up where you are. Glad you're doing great, DRX. I find it interesting, if you've changed your YouTube channel name twice now, are we going for a third? And I did notice that you managed to stumble into ownership, or at least use, of a very nice old house. And congratulations on that. Sounds like you got some good projects on the horizon. Interested to see what you do with that house. Make a spooky movie. 70% there, so I only gotta stretch it out for a little bit. Yeah, you don't need the rolling shutter correction. I got quite a delay. Holy hammerdasher. Yeah, I would say rolling shutter correction for something like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K or something similar. something doesn't have a global shutter, like Red Komodo has a global shutter, so you don't need to worry about it. Panasonic GH5 is another one you'd want to use that shutter correction on if you're flying larger cameras, right? Or, you know, larger cameras that you're going to have lots of movement in lateral movement, which will cause that jello effect as you as the lines scan in order, but the scene changes as the lines scan. So yeah, good times. Because I'm no Vaughn right now on PC. I'm guessing you meant you're not on a computer, which is fine. Okay, so that's done. Okay, we can just go ahead and close this. Boop. All right, and then we have our stabilized footage, and if I double clicky clack, come in here and it'll play back just nice. Simple 4K footage. Let's take a quick looky-loo at the footage, just so we know what we're working with here. Oops, not that way. I want to use media info. So media info is nice. It's part of the shit. I can't remember what the codec pack is called, but it's part of Media Player Classic, which is actually not classic. It's new, but it's just very well featured. So we got 3 minutes 36 seconds, average bit rate of 46.4 megabits per second, 24.00 frames per second. So that's kind of key. In order to get that with the GoPro, you need to use the Labs firmware. There's very little difference for most use cases between 23.976 and 24 perfect, 24.0 frames per second. So it depends on your workflow. It depends on what you need. If you're doing something for broadcast, it's going to be 23.976 or 29.997, 987, or whatever the hell it is. If you're doing something for film, it's going to be 24.0, 30.0, 60.0, things like that. And then it's HEVC, yeah, blah, 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 blah. The thing we care about here is 10 bits. Okay. And then chroma subsampling 420. It's the same that came off of the GoPro, and we're deliberately not doing the super duper high quality version because we don't have all night. And then the Rec 709 color space and transfer. So it's pretty basic. The one advantage we've got though is that 12-bit color that's going to enable us to be very flexible with it. And we have, you know, basic audio here. So we'll pop open some Resolve. Maybe. Did I not click it? There we go. There we go. Hello. Put the spinny thing on your eye. Boop, 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 boop. Let's turn this up a little. Let's do this. Boop. There we go. Got a little bit of background there. I don't know what's up with music. I just grabbed some tracks and like threw it together. Like I said, this has been close to zero effort. Okay, so here I am with an empty project. I usually like to start on the edit tab. Your mileage may vary, and I will typically just drag my footage in. Let's take a quick look at how my project is set up before we go any further than this, though. So I'll go to File, Project Settings. Obviously, I like 3840 by 2160. For my own YouTube videos, I always deliver in 4K UHD. Regardless if I'm going to use the 8K workflow, I'll bring those 8K files onto my 4K timeline. And that's just to add to the crispness of my video. But generally speaking, my exports are going to be 3840 by 2160. Some caveats to that will be is if I'm flying or using one of the larger cameras, the delivery resolution will be a little different, like 4120 by 2160 or something, like whatever the DCI 4K is. I can probably just look it up right here. Too far. Oh, not too far. 4096. That's right. 4096 by 2160. If I want to do some ultra wide, 4096 by 1716. There are some de-squeeze, anamorphic. That's the word I was looking for. That's the word. Yeah, there's some de-squeeze settings in there. I think if you're at the point where you're using anamorphic lens, you know that already, so I don't think that needs any explanation. Image scaling, I really don't do much with this because I'll just end up changing the settings individually. Color management, where most people want to hang out. I like to use color management because you have an option of just whatever the colors are, and DaVinci doesn't really care, nor will it convert any color spaces for you. You can use the management where it's got some pretty simple stuff here. Are you making SDR, or like, are you editing on an SDR monitor or an HDR monitor? An HDR monitor only really counts if like you're on a Mac. But if you want your output to your viewing monitor, which you guys couldn't see, cause no way to capture it, to be HDR, you'd select HDR. It also adjusts the way your tools will respond to certain situations, like contrast slider and stuff like that. What a tough time slot for this cult. I'm sorry, brah. I know, what is it? Shelby Voll's stream is live right now, right? So, sorry. This is just how I prefer to end my Sunday night, so I don't panic about the work week coming up. Good to see you, Lambo. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. So, we're just going to be doing SDR grade with SDR Rec 709 delivery, so we don't really need to mess with it. Some of the options here, you can use Rec 2020 for SDR. Almost zero advantage for doing that. I don't know anybody who delivers Rec 2020 for SDR. Usually Rec 709 is going to be good enough. If you're handing a project off or a pre-graded file off to another colorist, you'll get shot for giving them Gamma 2.2 Rec 7 or Rec 2020. Yeah, I think I recall you saying you were going to sell your anamorphic. sRGB is more like web graphics. It used to be a problem. Like if you uploaded a video to Facebook, if you upload a Rec 709 to Facebook, it would be too dark. There was not a conversion that happened, and now Facebook and all the other major like video players or whatever, they'll take Rec 709 and make it sRGB so it's bright enough on most computer monitors. And then there's HDR HLG, which is hybrid log gamma, and this is what I was talking about in one of my videos, one of my last videos. I did an HDR grade. The hybrid log gamma is cool because it plays on any display, right? You use the same file to watch it on an SDR monitor or TV or phone as you would an HDR monitor or TV phone. So it's quite helpful for distribution. It is a little bit harder to control in some respects and easier to control in other respects. The default for like say Netflix and Amazon is PQ, or I can't remember what PQ stands for. It's been a while. I'm glad you're liking that Blackmagic 4K. Oh, you sold your S5 IIX. What is that? 8, 7, 8? I don't know anymore. I'm a Blackmagic guy. That's all I know. Blackmagic and like a small subsection sliver of red. So, yeah, I don't recall what PQ stands for. But this is like, if you grade in PQ, it'll look like dark garbage on an SDR monitor or an SDR display. It won't look correct at all. There's only one way to consume it, and you have to grade for a specific luminance value. Typically, the standard for luminance value is 1,000 nits. That's kind of the de facto standard for HDR. You can have an HDR experience with only 300 nits, which is around the default brightness of a computer monitor, but it's obviously not going to be as pronounced, right? If you can't go bright, then you have to be able to go dark and still maintain details. So you need to, like an OLED, for instance. An OLED that only had a peak brightness at 300 nits would still look pretty damn good. Anyway, we're not doing any of the HDR stuff today because there's no way I could show it to you. And if I switch to that mode, this screen capture would get all washed out. My camera would probably invert. My ears would fall off, and my tits would turn black and rot off. So we're not going to mess with any of that today. We're just doing standard SDR Rec 709. All the other options don't really matter for this. You can just use whatever's out of the box. And we will grab this guy, bring it over here. Okay, so I want to see those who are watching, if you know what I should have done in this case, and I deliberately didn't do it because I wanted to see who would catch it. What did I forget to do in the beginning of this video? Let's go over it a little bit. Just did that just in case that gets loud. What do you not see in the beginning of this clip? Anybody who's watched the last couple of my videos might remember what you're supposed to do when you start recording before you do anything else. What are you supposed to put in front of the camera? No, what? Gangrene titty attacks? Forgot to clap? Nope, because my audio capture is being captured by the same device that's capturing my video. It's already synced up. What do I have to do to this video first thing? Yeah, that's right, my color card. My color chart. I didn't use my color chart, so how am I going to get my white balance now? Oh shit. I could eyeball it. I could use the scopes. I can try using some of the auto white balance. But here's some of the tenets of like what you want to look for when you need to pull white balance off of something else, or even your color chart, right? So in this case, even if I put my color chart in front of my camera, it would be incorrect because my primary light source is back there. I would need to turn it around so that my color chart is being exposed to that primary light source. So essentially, you want to make sure that the white that you're going to capture your white balance from is lit and not in shadow. Shadow will end up causing everything to be much cooler. So that means I need to find a shot from this drone that's facing the opposite way or that's up high where I can capture a reasonably white color from the other direction that's being lit by the sun. As such as it is, the sun was very behind everything. So let's see what I can find. Oh, it looks like we've got a nice white Tesla there. That will be good enough. So I'm going to zoom in, middle click and drag. Hello, Mr. Tesla. Let's see, maximum luminance value looks right there. Okay, cool. So now I know I can get it. I don't have to go back to the beach. Whoops. Get that crap out of here. Don't have to go back to the beach. So we're just going to drag this, put it on the old timeline. Because I remember I already clipped my in and out. Let's see. I bought a color chart after seeing you use one. Haven't gotten to use it yet. Also trying to figure out how to compare what I see on my laptop screen versus what it looks like on my iPhone screen. So the problem with the iPhone screen is it's really, really nice. From a color standpoint, the iPhone screen is fantastic. If you could get a grading monitor that made that same screen, or made of that same screen, it would cost you 40 grand. So if you're going to trust one source of what something's going to look like, trusting your iPhone is probably the best thing to do. Don't have the studio version, so I can't use the remote player thing. Oh yeah, good point. Oh, okay, so I just flipped over to my color tab, and we need to find that frame again with that Tesla. So I will drag it around, drag it around, drag it around. There you are. Okay, zoom in, middle click to drag. Look at that, just perfectly angled just for me. Okay, get that out of the way so I don't accidentally hit that. So I'll come down here to my left, and if you can see that, it's tiny, my little white balance picker. So the whole idea here is you want to pick something that is white or gray. Gray is okay too, it doesn't have to be perfectly pitch white. But when you select it, you get the little drop on your icon. When you hover over stuff, it gives you your RGB value. Okay, so you don't want anything that's going to be peaked out, that's going to be up near like 250, because then its actual tone will shift and you won't get accurate. Usually around the 180 to 200 is going to be good enough for that. So I'm going to go to that area right here that has the highest luminance value. You can kind of tell by like scrolling over it, like dragging over it, that red goes all the way up to 191 and then back down again. We want to grab that 191. Oop. Okay, let's see how that looks. Damn it, I did it again. Okay, easiest way to see if you've nailed your white balance is take your saturation and crank it all the way up. Does it look like clown show? No, that actually looks pretty good. The sand looks as it does. The trees look as they should. Everything looks pretty much as it is. Now, I know from my eye that if I switched over to HDR, I would get punished because it has to be absolutely perfect when you do HDR grades. That's one of the reasons why I'm not doing an HDR grade. And I can tell because of the way it kind of flares out around the sun. So we're going to count our lucky stars that we're doing an SDR grade. And we go ahead and reset our saturation here. And now we have our white balance picked. So I'll take my node, I'm going to label it WB, and I'm going to lock that bitch because I do not want to accidentally screw it up. I don't want to add anything else to it. I don't want to do anything to it. Okay, create a new one. So I am going to assume that you guys don't have the studio version, and so I'm not going to do the split grade where I separate the sky and the ground. It's not necessarily... Well, it's not necessary for one. For me, it's convenient because I get to do really trippy shit with the sky and trippy shit with the ground and not have them interfere with each other. But I'm going to teach you guys the worst kept secret, maybe the best kept secret for action camera footage. Once you have your white balance pulled, this is going to blow your minds, okay? Because if you want to get, this is just for basic corrections. This is not your creative look, but this is for your basic corrections, okay? So this is GP log. I'm going to take my pivot down here. And remember, I'm on this second one, the second node, so I don't screw up my white balance even though I've locked it, okay? I'm going to take my pivot down here and I'll pull it all the way up. Doesn't do anything, right? Okay. Now I'm going to take my shadows and I'm going to pull them all the way up. Oh, it's getting kind of washed out. Now I'm going to take my contrast slider and I'm going to drag that up to about 1.4, 1.5. And boom. Look, there you go. You got a whole bunch more detail in the sky. You got colors in the trees. All of a sudden the color just came out of nowhere and all this detail just came out of nowhere. So let's take a quick look at it, see what it looks like. Anytime you want to take off. And your scene will kind of dictate how much of that contrast you want to pull in. But my shadows aren't destroyed. My highlights aren't blown out. It's three things that I did to it. And I didn't use the D-Log LUT that GoPro provided because that thing is absolute trash. Absolute trash. And I didn't discard any of that data, right? I didn't have to change my gamma curve. Well, actually, I did change the gamma curve, but I used the contrast slider to do it. So, hopefully, that was as impressive as I hoped it was. Right? And then from here, like, we'll tune it a little bit. Maybe I want a little bit more. Okay, so... Alright, so that is really awesome out there. That detail in the sky. That's really pretty. I'm going to go back over this and do a split grade because I really, really like the way that sky looks and I want to pull out that detail. There's so much detail in here you still can't see. I mean, if I get really aggressive with this, you can kind of see where that detail is. Right, there's a whole other layer of clouds you can't even see. And if I turn this off, it all just disappears, right? Details, no details. So usually 1.425 to 1.475 is probably good enough. You're just gonna like tune it, right? You don't want to crush your shadows. So you have to be mindful of the actual dynamic range of your scene. So basically my litmus test is going to be down here in the darkness of the trees. I don't want that to be black. I want it to be just barely visible. And that's what I have. So, not too shabby. Now, when you're cranking on the contrast the way I did, it does increase saturation. But we want to take it up another spot more. And so I'm just going to grab my saturation and I'm not going to touch it because let me show you what we're going to do. See this tab right here? No, but everybody ignores this tab. So this tab has an RGB mixer. And then we have 100%, you know, our blue output is 100% or float, right? It's a float value, but it can go above 1. Yes, Car Guy for Life, FPV asks, would this same technique work with GoPro 10? Absolutely. In fact, this technique will work with almost any camera. And when I say almost any camera that's putting out Rec 709 with Gamma 2.2 or 2.4. So GoPro, Action, O3, your cell phone, my wife's Air 2S, it works great doing that. The time when it doesn't work is when you're dealing with either an extremely aggressive log profile, or you're dealing with linear footage, or you're dealing with raw footage. It does not work with raw footage. Raw footage, you have to go the classic way of lift, gamma, gain, and offset. Otherwise, you just destroy everything. But for stuff that's already like, I want to say rasterized, stuff that's already been rasterized by a camera that comes out in H.264, H.265, that works for almost every camera. It's mind-blowing how easy it is, and you get a consistent and simple look every time. So over here, we have our outputs. They're all float values. They're currently set to 1. If I mess with 1, it goes really wacky, right? Probably gone in here and messed around with these buttons. You can swap color channels and do all kinds of wacky shit with it, make it look otherworldly, which is a lot of fun. But here, I'm going to take my blue, and we're going to put it up to 200%. And we're going to take our green, put it up to 200%. Guess what we're doing with our red? 200%. Okay, so it depends on the scene, right? This is sometimes appropriate and sometimes not. This doesn't actually increase your saturation. What this does is the same as over here doing color boost. Okay, same thing as color boost. Color boost versus saturation. How can I explain that? Color boost is like color contrast. So complementary colors get saturated relative to each other, whereas saturation, all colors, regardless of value, get saturated. You can see how like nothing really pops when I mess around the saturation. Okay, when I do color boost, notice that that orange in the tree and the orange of the sand kind of pops away from the green. It's very fake. I don't use it all that often. But I just wanted to show you, with some footage, especially indoor footage, popping these up to 2 will give you a lot more color contrast and things will look pretty interesting, I think. But in this case, for outdoor stuff, my standard is I just punch that to 65 and call it a day. So now I have my technical grade. Let's have a look again. Actually, I'm going to trim that down real quick so we can see with the noise, right, when I took off. Oh, okay, there we go. Looking at the wrong thing, so we'll trim back to there. There we go. Now we don't have to wait. So back over to the color page. Hit play. It looks pretty good. Yeah, see, the thing about that method is it goes against all the cardinal rules of color grading. As a professional colorist, I would almost always leave the contrast, pivot, and shadows sliders alone. Sliders like the shadows and highlight sliders, those are logarithmic, so they don't add contrast, but the contrast slider does add contrast when you increase the contrast, or add saturation when you increase the contrast. Oh my god, my brain's gonna explode. The pivot kind of does it like when you add contrast to something, you're pushing your shadows lower and you're pushing your highlights higher, right? The center point, that's the pivot. So if you push that center point all the way to the top, then it's going to start with your highlights, leave your highlights alone, and it's going to push all your shadows and everything linearly down towards the bottom. Okay, so if we look at, pop this out right here. Okay, we look at this. This is, now I remove that contrast. Let me stop it from playing. Okay, so you can see most of my stuff is in the mid-tones. All right. Now this is a logarithmic scale. This is 1,000 nits. Well, it's, if this was HDR, don't pay attention to these numbers. Up here at the very top is as bright as something can get, and down here at 0 is as dark as something can get, because this is not HDR, so it's a different scale. But most of our stuff is in the midtones. Okay, so when I reset the pivot to the default and I apply contrast, see that how it stretches it out from the middle, right? And our highlights get higher, and some of our shadows get darker, right? And it just kind of bleh, just bleh, right? So if I add that contrast and then I move my pivot around, so I'll move the pivot up. See how the stretched part is sort of like moving up until it's all the way up. And then my highlights are exactly where they should be. The relationship, you get a little bit more contrast in your highlights. And you can make other adjustments after this. So obviously, like, we don't need to have anything that's super bright in here, right? There's not like a headlight or a flashlight looking at me. So I don't need to have anything up in this specular range. I just want to have everything linearly stretched down. And that's why we set the pivot all the way up. So we'll go back to that 14.4, give or take. And put that back where it belongs. I'm going to watch this live stream on repeat this week. Honestly, this is simple stuff. Other colorists will gatekeep and tell you have to do it a certain way. You have to have the certain equipment and have the certain software, you know, in order to do this seriously. I mean, I can teach you how to do HDR grades without an HDR monitor. It's not hard. You just have to learn how to read the scopes. That's it. And this is, you know, this gives you your base start for when you want to get creative. Okay. So we've got our white balance done. We have our corrections done. Oops. Gotta stop that first. Okay, so I'm going to label this corrections. Okay, now, if you wanted to go back and tweak, like let's say you do some other creative stuff up here and just linearly, right? And you want to go back and tweak the saturation here or tweak the contrast here. It's going to affect those other nodes up here. We don't necessarily want that. We want to use our white balanced node as our source, but we also want to do something like tone the shadows and tone the highlights. Hey, no worries, car guy. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have the DVR, and you can go back and watch it again later on. But also asking questions while I'm going through. I'm happy to just and talk, address the question. Greg says he doesn't want to interrupt the lesson flow, so just keep moving forward. Honestly, I have like zero curriculum here, so the end goal is just kind of just show you what I do, my shortcut, my super secret shortcut for your basic corrections, and give you guys something to play with. Because getting to this correction part, this is the easy part, right? A lot of people will try to put a creative LUT or something on uncorrected footage and it looks like ass. I hate that. I take it personally when people do that. So we try not to do creative LUTs on top of uncorrected footage because we don't like hurting Joe's feelings, right? We don't want to hurt my feelings. So we want to get our correction done, and I've figured out the easiest way to do it for almost any rasterized footage is just the pivot, contrast, and shadows slider. And you might have to do something like pop another node in between here and just boost the shadows more if 100 is not enough. You see, if I take this up to 100 and I go back to my contrast, I can pull this contrast down even more. and get more detail out of my sky. Now I start getting oversaturated here, so I might pop my saturation down, but you can also see what happens to my... I'm starting to get blooming along the edges here. It's starting to look very fake. Speaking of fake, let me show you how GoPro Motion Blur works. So I have an ND32 ND filter on my camera, and my shutter speed is locked at 1/48 of a second, or half the duration of one frame exposed, right? So 24 frames per second, half that time, half of a frame is being exposed. But unlike, holy shit, let me get rid of that meat hook abortion here. Okay. Pull that down. So unlike, you know, a cinema camera, which will actually cumulatively expose the sensor for that period of time and give you very silky, natural motion blur. If you look real close down in this corner, you see how it's multiple images, right? Multiple images of the same thing. So the way the GoPro does is it just takes a rapid series of stills and mushes them on top of each other, and then after it mushes them on top of each other, it takes that and says that's the frame. So you do get some blurring, right? It looks pretty blurry in areas where I'm not going particularly fast, but you can push that by being close to something, going fast, and just kind of it definitely exposes the weakness of how the GoPro works for motion blur. So, but when you're at speed, it's really difficult to tell, right? Nobody's going to be pixel peeping the corners. And generally speaking, it's going to be pretty silky smooth. It's better than trying to do it digitally in post. That's always a major pain in the ass, and it requires a lot of compute power to do it right. Fun times. Yes, you have my permission to use meat hook abortion. That's fine. I'll allow it. All right, I need a little sippy sip and then a vapey vape. And I get clouded up. Okay, so we have our base correction now. Let's start doing something creative. But like I said, I don't want to have my creative look depend on the settings of these two nodes, okay? Or especially this node, this correction node. We don't want our creative look to depend on this. So we want our creative look to be completely separate from this. So if I want to change something here, it doesn't affect my creative look, and if I want to change something in my creative look, it doesn't affect my contrast. Do you happen to know how the GoPro Motion Blur compares to the Motion Blur feature in DaVinci? It's actually a good question. They both function in much the same way, actually. What Resolve does with Motion Blur is it will kind of smear. It uses optical flow to try to guesstimate the motion, right? And then it will take and sort of just smear or drag multiple exposures of, or multiple copies of those particular elements, depending upon how many warp points there are, and what the iterations are. The advantage is in Resolve, if you just use the basic Motion Blur plugin, like, let me just show this to you here. If you use it in the color page, you're screwing yourself. Like if you come over here and you're like, I want to turn on Motion Blur. Okay, so motion range basically explains like what is the scale of the motion. The motion scale here is always huge. So 50% would be roughly your natural 180 degree shutter angle motion blur. Looks okay, right? But it'll struggle with patterns that are close to the camera that are moving too fast. So as I get close to the, it'll struggle a little bit. You can kind of see it around the edges because it breaks down. But you have no options over this. You have no actual settings. So if I'm going to use motion blur, there's three ways. I tend to go the third way unless I don't have time, then I'll use the second way, which I'm about to show you. Okay, so on the edit page, what I'll do is I'll search in here for motion blur, which is going to be in filters, and I'll drop it on my footage. Then over here in the inspector, I'll see motion blur, right? So that's already set up for 50, you know, that 50%, which is where generally you want your cinematic motion blur to come in, right? 50%, half the time of a frame, 180 degree shutter angle. You're going to hear a lot of different things that kind of mean that same thing. But you got some advanced controls. So blur direction. This in the cinema world, when you're working with a film camera, this is where you sort of I'm trying to like conceptualize this. So this is how the shutter opens and closes. Whether you want your motion blur to be center of it's a mechanical thing, and we fake it in the real world. But generally speaking, when you think motion blur, you want to be you don't want to blur the frame coming in. You want to blur the frame going out. So you would go from previous flame. Okay, and your granularity is how many of those tiny little like copies it's going to make. Hey, Maddie's Drone World, good to see you, dude. So the granularity is going to be how many of these little copies, right? The more you have, the smoother it's going to get. But 20 is not a lot. That's max. No, you can just click and drag on the number, pull it all the way up to 50. And now it's going to drag ass, but it's going to look a lot smoother and take only slightly longer. So it's a little bit better of an option than using it on the color page. I've developed a plugin for Fusion on the Fusion tab, but we're talking multiple seconds per frame, and it's not very economical. So it's not the best thing in the world. Anyway, moving right along. I appreciate that question. I need another sippy sip. Where my gourd? Shit. Okay, so we have our base corrections done, but we don't want our creative look to affect that. But we also want to We want to base our creative look off of the white balance. So easiest thing to do, right click your corrector and add a parallel node. Boop. Okay, so in this case, since it's parallel, it doesn't matter which node, input these nodes go into, they're going to be mixed together. So I'm going to make another one, add parallel. All right, I'll just pull these out of the way. I'll label them real quick. No label. I'll call this one highlights. And I will call this one, bet you can guess, shadows. No clue what's happening here. Yeah, Maddie, we're grading together. If you look in the description, there's a GoPro file you can download and work on alongside me if you want, or at a later time. So you can kind of go towards the same result that I have. So by all means, but yeah, working with me is probably not the easiest thing in the world to do unless you just like background the video. I'm trying not to go super fast. I'm not trying to be one of those like turbo tutorial kind of guys. But yeah, you can definitely rewatch, and it will be available in 4K to rewatch, which is, fun. So we've got our two creative nodes created with a parallel to our corrector. Okay, so our corrector gave us our contrast and our saturation. And now we're done making corrections. So what I'll want to do here, I usually start with my shadows, and that's just out of habit. Let's see, I'm a terrible editor. I usually just use the footage right off the SD card of the 11 mini. Sorry, Maddie. You need to spend more time with me, bud. We'll get you coloring like a pro in no time. The whole reason I'm doing this, the whole reason is because I don't even get me started. Just don't do it. I love you guys, but do something to your footage, Please, for the love of God. Okay, anyway, let's continue. All right, so shadows. How do I make it only apply to the shadows? Well, I'll go to the little dropper tab here, my qualifier tab, and I'm not going to mess around with hue and saturation. I'm just going to, well, first I want to be able to see what I'm doing. So this icon up here will turn on what is and isn't selected. That'll make sense in just a moment. So I'm going to take from the highlight side and start dragging it down, and then whatever's grayed out is no longer selected. It won't be affected by any adjustments I make. So I usually take it down till I can really only see some of my darkest spots. And then I'll soften the top of that. You look down here, it creates a little slope. I'll soften the top of that out. So I'm getting my shadows plus a little bit else, you know, a little bit extra. Might bump it forward just to make sure that I have those shadows completely. But I don't want to get the highlights. Okay, I'll go to my color wheels and lift, which is your shadows. I'm going to pull my shadows towards cyan down here. Okay, this is your basic split tone grade. So I will just ever so slightly pull that little guy down here. Just a tiny bit, not a lot. Okay, and then I will turn this off. And now I have toned my shadows cyan, right? So we're halfway there to a nice like orange and teal, right? Very popular grade. Most people make LUTs for it. Most people sell LUTs for it. Not me. I fucking hate LUTs. I ain't giving you no LUTs. You can make your own LUTs if you want because they can be convenient. If you want to do the same thing over and over again, making your own LUT, fantastic. I ain't gonna sell you shit though. So we've toned our shadows. Overall, we've got a little bit of a bluish, kind of a cool tone. So we need to warm up the highlights to contrast that bluish cyan shadow. So we'll go to our highlights. Make sure our highlights tab is turned on. And I'll hit my selection visible. Then I'm going to come from the shadow side of the luminance. Whoop. And we will take it up until all we see are like the brightest parts of the trees. Okay. And then we will come from the top, because we're in a split grade, we're going to pull it down until we don't see the sky anymore. Beautiful. Okay. So now we're going to soften the lower part. Soft. There we go. Soft. And we're going to soften the top part just a little bit. But I have to raise that up high. Okay. So now we've isolated the brightest parts of our trees. And then soften it up a little bit so we don't have any hard lines. And then we'll turn this off because we actually want to see the entire scene now when we're doing this. So instead of lift, we're going to use gamma. You could use gain, but then you're really going to affect things like the sun color. We want to try to touch the sky as little as possible. Because if any of it leaks through your selection, which shouldn't be selected because we've address the top of it. So we're selecting a small sliver of luminance. Luminance is brightness, okay? Chrominance is color. So we're selecting a small luminance level here, and we're going to tone it orange. Turn that off. And we're going to use the gamma wheel. We're going to push it towards orange. Now this one you can be a little bit more aggressive with. Maybe not in this case. Okay. So now we have our highlights pushed towards orange and our shadows pushed towards cyan. Bartman, dude. What's wrong with 8 Eastern, dude? What are you, in the middle of the Atlantic? That's a little bit too much orange. Let's address that. Let's take a look. Maybe my selection is off. It's just too much orange. So we'll pull that back in. That's better. So we just want to warm up the highlights ever so slightly to contrast the cool shadows. Yeah, everyone's going to be rewatching anyway. I'm not taking this stuff down. It's going to stay up. You can just watch it at 1.5x. You know, whatevs. I'll leave the link to the video up for a while. Give you guys an opportunity to play with this clip. Almost. Yeah, well, we're the same time zone, Maddie. So, I mean, I'm like, where's Bartman? Is he like in Europe or something? Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. So you're central. That's not a big deal. Is everybody confused by the time change, the daylight saving time change bullshit that happened last night? Stupid time change. Now the sun's setting at 5:30. Dumb as shit. Hate it. It's still later than, like, if I were actually on the eastern part of the time zone, like Florida, the sun's setting at like 2 or some shit like that. So, yeah, that sucks. I do like being on the western part of the time zone because then I get those 10:30 p.m. sunsets in the summertime. But I would just like to have longer days, period. So yeah, you know, we toned our shadows to blue and we pushed our midtones towards orange ever so slightly. We didn't want to necessarily get too aggressive with it. And to finish it off, just some of my standard things here. So after the parallel, right, now we can do whatever we want. We can fuck with our highlights, we can fuck with our shadows, and the shadows won't affect the highlights won't affect the shadows, and none of them will affect the correction. So if I come in here and I draw this down, so now we've totally unsaturated our corrector, and you can still see the blue in the shadows and still see the orange in the highlights. That's what we've done. Okay, so if I turn the highlights off, and that turns monochrome. If I turn the shadows off, shadows now turn monochrome as well. So that's an interesting way you can also visualize what you do, is just desaturating your corrector. But they also don't affect each other. Whoops, didn't mean to turn that off. Set that back to 65. But it's nice because you can go back and fix something. If maybe you've got too dark of shadows, you can come over here and back off on the contrast a little bit, and none of those other adjustments will change. So if I make that completely black, you can see our blue tinted, ever so slight, you can see our blue tinted shadows. You can see our orange tinted highlights. If I just make everything else gone, right? So it's always there. It's never going to be affected by the corrector. $15 times to get it. Well, you know, Maddie, that's cool. And I hope you come back, and I hope you come back with questions so I can help you, and I hope you come back with maybe some footage. I am gonna get a Discord up. I'm twisting my arm here. I'm just lazy. I thought people, you know, would email me, whatever. And I will get that there Discord up. Let me look at something real quick on the telephone here. DRX, you said you sent a submission, correct? I go down to it. Nomad Aerial. Did all this stuff go into the junk folder? No. Yeah, I'm lazy. Hey, Tony, what's up, dog? Good to see you, bud. We're just doing some coloring, man. So yeah, fuck the email for submissions. I'll set up a Discord like a goddamn adult. Sorry. That way, maybe next week we can dig into some of your guys' footage. What I would really like to see, though, is take the clip that I've put in the description, color it how you want to color it, and then post it to your YouTube and send me a link. I would absolutely love to see what you do with my footage. have viewer submissions and they could possibly do their own color grade and you also grade it compared to them. That's not a bad idea. I like that. Okay. I appreciate it, DRX. That lets me know that my email is not actually broken. Yeah, Car Guy, that's actually a really great idea. And that's sort of what I intended to do. I just didn't voice it that way. Like, people send me their completed stuff, and if they were interested to see how would I do it, then I would do it that way, but I don't think I would do that by default. What I don't want to do is give anybody the impression they're doing anything wrong, right? If you're doing something, that's better than not doing anything and just uploading to the internet, Maddie. Sorry, dude. Sorry. Huh. Yeah, that'd be cool. We'll have to explore that one. Once I get the Discord up, we can all chat about it. I will put the Discord links in the description of this video and the subsequent videos, and I'm sure to upload sometime tonight or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. I've got a lot to do tonight still. So, moving along here. There's, like, this is probably, if you uploaded this or showed it to somebody, they'd be like, wow, that looks pretty good. We can add a special touch. And most of you probably already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about vignette, which is a softening or a darkening of the corners of a frame. And the point of it is to draw the focus more towards the center of the frame. So any distractions that are happening on the edge makes those distractions sort of blur in. And we don't necessarily have that problem as pilots because what's happening on the sides of the frames tends to be quick anyway. But, so we're going to create a serial node right after the parallel node. So I'll add node, add serial. And now I have a blank serial node. Go to my little power window tab here. And I make me a circle. Boop. Now I have a circle. Fantastic. Fly my GoPro on my 5-inch for the first time. Yeah, dude. Slap it on there. You never know until you try. So I have to drag this circle so that it's bigger than my frame. And that just means I need to zoom out on it. And then I will drag my circle until, so like this right here is like the gradient, right? The softness of it. So, out here on the edge, it is the most effective, and in here, it is the least effective, and then it's like a soft gradient there. So what I want to do, now I actually have to reset this node because I rely on some of the default settings here. What I want to do, I want to take this inside ring, I want to make this bigger, and keep it square until that inside ring touches the bottom of the frame. Just like that. And then I'm going to take the side here and I'm going to open it horizontally until that inside ring touches the frame. Just like that. Now I'm going to open up the softness until that outside ring touches the corner. So you see the corner there? Now I've got what I tend to like, is an appropriately balanced out vignette. So vignette classically is created by a lens that its picture that it's projecting on the sensor or film is slightly too small, and there's some darkening in the corners of the frame. That's really where that comes from. Nowadays it's used as a stylistic type of thing. So what I want to do, because normally this selector, this power window, is only going to affect what's happening on the inside, right? So if I pull the gain down, it's just happening on the inside. So I need to invert it. Okay, so I'm going to hit invert down here. And then what I like to do to be able to visualize it better is I will return it to full screen. I just hit Z on my keyboard, and then I'm going to turn this off so I don't see the power window. And instead of gain, I'm going to use gamma. I'm going to slowly draw that gamma down. And what it's going to happen is it's going to create some slightly darkened but also saturated midtones in the corners. So you see the difference there? See how my midtones kind of increase in saturation? If I reset that and do gamma, it's just going to get darker. No additional saturation, right? So your mileage may vary. You can use any three of these. If I use a lift vignette, then I'm going to maintain the highlights in the corners, but it's going to affect the shadows. And this can be interesting if you have a lot of bright lights, because the bright lights will survive going into the corners, but anything outside of that will become black, you know, or darker. Yeah, DRX, I think more of it is like having control over it. If you have a lens that doesn't have vignetting, it means you have a lens that's designed for your sensor. Usually you get vignetting when you adapt lenses to different mounts, that their back focal length is different, or they're meant for a different film. Like taking a 16 millimeter lens and trying to project onto a 35 millimeter frame, you're going to get some serious vignetting, if not a harsh circle. And then also the width of the angle can also affect vignetting. So like telephoto lenses that have small projection will have much harsher vignettes than ultra wide angles. A lot of lenses will over project onto a frame, and that nowadays are kind of designed for that. So like you have a full frame lens, if you looked inside the camera, there would be parts of the image that were not hitting the sensor around the corners, and probably past the corners just ever so slightly. The whole point of that is just to make sure you're getting uniform color, corner to corner. But really you are throwing away some of the things that the lens can see. But it's all been calibrated. So when it says it's 200 millimeters, you're getting 200 millimeters hitting the sensor, right? So it's a wee bit crazy. So your mileage may vary. You can do any of these that you like. You don't have to use lift, gamma, or gain. You can even do an offset, which just takes everything down and increases that saturation, but doesn't affect your highlights as much. My personal preference is a gamma, unless I'm doing HDR, and then I'll use a gain. Gamma vignette in HDR looks like absolute ass, so I don't use it. So there we go. This is a basic grade for that clip. Now I want to see what you guys can do with it. Upload them to your YouTubes. Send me links. I will make sure to get the word out about Discord when I get that shit sorted out. This is the first time I've ever given my untouched footage to anybody else, so you guys can play with it now. I think in a different night we'll talk about GoPro Labs and the settings that I use on my GoPros to kind of get your footage where you probably want it. The more you can get correct in camera, the less you have to do in post. What I really want to do is thank you for the Gyroflow. Oh yeah, you're welcome, bro. That's I just identified a problem and identified a pretty easy solution and just talked to the right people, I guess. So now it's kind of the standard, right? Any of the new cinema cameras are going to have gyro in them, and their formats are all going to write gyro data, and it's just the idea of, like, the whole concept of gimbals is kind of, it's not dead. It's definitely not dead. But the concept of gimbals is a little. I was looking at some gimbals, and then now that everything can be gyro stabilized and the rolling sensor can be corrected for, I don't really feel like I need a gimbal, and I can run and gun with just a very small rig. Unfortunately, I wish I had it, since like 2019. I've got a lot of footage that I just can't use because it's too shaky. And I wish I could have done better there. But yeah, so pretty simple stuff here. We only did 4-5 nodes if you count the parallel. And remember that correction is the super secret squirrel stupid easy 3 sliders, and 2 of them are all the way to the ends, and only one you have to really think about, which is a contrast. No problem, car guy. Happy to do this, and definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys put together. But now we have like for like footage, so show me your chops, show me what you got. You can be as conservative or as extravagant with your grade as you like. It is up to your personal taste. If you want, when you post this video, in the doobly-doo down below, in your video. Tell me how you did it, what you did. If you followed my instructions or if you started with my instructions and you just kind of went off on your own, that's totally cool too. Oh my goodness, DRX. Fell down the stairs and it looked like a crane shot. That's awesome. I've got a gimbal for my cell phone, so I'm fancy like that. Yeah, so let me know if you want what you did in the description. And I want to reiterate though, it's like I'm just one guy. I have learned how to do this for me and for myself, and people happen to enjoy what I have to, you know, what I'm able to put together with footage, and appreciate it enough to sometimes occasionally compensate me with money to do their footage. So that's a thing. But in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there are a lot of colorists on YouTube who will tell you that everything has to be a certain way, and that's absolute fucking bullshit. Your node tree doesn't have to look a certain way, doesn't have to be set up a certain way. You know, it doesn't, there's no wrong way to do it. There's optimal ways and less optimal ways, but there are different ways to achieve the same look, ultimately. Like, we're talking the difference between your untouched footage and your finished footage. There's 1.5 billion different ways to get there, and I'm just showing you the way I happen to do it. I don't claim to be the de facto authority on color grading, but I might be for color grading GoPros. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody do anything close to what I can pull off with a GoPro. But we'll see. We shall see. Yes, color grading is a form of art. I would agree with that. There is a technical aspect to it. I mean, in fact, Car Guy, that's a great, kind of a great comparison. Like, photography is an art form, right? But it's such a well-documented art form, and that's a problem with it. Because now, especially in 2023, any asshole can buy a reasonably good enough camera and a reasonably good enough lens, and they can buy a book or watch a few YouTube videos, and they can set it up the same way the dickhead on YouTube sets it up, and they can set up their lights the same way the dickhead on YouTube sets it up, and they can take great photos for days and years and might even make some decent money at it. When it comes to actually, like, doing the art of photography, right? All that shit goes right out the window. It doesn't matter what your settings are. It matters how you approach what you're doing, what's in your heart when you approach what you're doing, and what it is you want to try to get out of it. That's where the art comes in. And not everybody has it. Yeah, not everybody has it. So, same thing with color grading, right? You can set your nodes exactly the same as mine have. You can set your GoPro or your action up so that it's, you know, exactly the same or whatever, and you can get great footage out of it. Cool. Do something with it, right? Make it your own. And even if you just, hey, fuck you, Google. Okay. Hey, shut up. Even if you just set your shit up my way, right? If you like this, cool. Take it and own it. I am giving you the tools for free. I don't care. So, wrenches for everyone. Yeah, I don't... I guess... Okay. Whatever. Wrenches for everyone. Let's do it. Let's get... Put user in timeout. That sounds right. Boop. There we go. Let me pull this up here. I'll make you Wrenchy Boy. And where are you at, Maddie? I'll make you a Wrenchy Boy. Got it. I can't. There it is. Who else needs a wrench? Who needs to become a Wrenchy Boy? Oh, hey. Look at that. Thanks. Appreciate that, DRX. Someone had to do it. Yeah. Got a Patreon. If you like what I do, and you want to motivate me to keep doing it, toss me a couple bucks. I put nothing behind a paywall. I ain't gonna sell you shit, so don't feel obligated. But if you like this, what you want to do, cool. I'd appreciate it. Thanks, brah. So, now that you've all been faced with this task of doing a basic correction and grade, any questions? Can I answer any questions before I punch out of here and go do some laundry? Oh, Bartman dude. Bruh. Fucking. Boop. No. Yeah. Ah! And as moderator, standard moderator. Bartman dude is now a standard moderator for your channel. Alright, does everybody have wrenches needs one? Or does everyone needs wrenches has one? I'm going to shower wrenches in the next stream as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. You guys always hit me up in the comments with 16,000 questions, and I'm totally cool with it. So, if anything occurs to you, just comment on this video, and I will answer as quickly as I can, with as much depth as I can. Some things, if the answer is too complex, then I'll take it as a subject for the next stream, and we'll go over it. You gonna make a new case? Like the actual chassis case, or like a frame type, thing? Time to spam my OnlyFans. Yeah, definitely. Check out my OnlyFans. I don't know what you're gonna get there. Probably homeless guy, homeless chic. That's pretty funny. I think I've said that a couple of times in different streams, different videos. So I think that's pretty good. Having any requests in? Yeah, I don't know that I actually need any more rig for my Blackmagic. It's completely rigged out. I blew all the money on it, so it's like Cadillac rigged out. Take it apart. Yo, the actual chassis, take it apart, make a new one. I wish you luck, my friend. Have you torn one down before? You're homeless shake. So, chic, C-H-I-C, as in like fashion. Not a homeless chic, not a Islamic cleric or whatever the hell they are. I don't know. Weirdos. All right, like I said, you guys have any more questions? Throw them down in the comments. I'll get with you as soon as I can. If it's too complex, we'll throw it up for the next live stream. Looking at doing these every other week. So we did it this weekend. Probably won't have one next weekend. And yeah, maybe I'll shoot you some pics, T-Rex. I will get the Discord set up, get the word out, so y'all can come hang out with me, and we'll do things and stuff. Next stream in 2 weeks. Okay, kids? I'm going to get off here now. I love you all lots. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. And if you're watching this for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 15th time, thank you very much for joining me and having interest in the world of color. And, I mean, what can I say? Y'all a good bunch. So, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think every week I'd get burned out doing this. Every other week, it works out for me. Welcome, guys. Have a good one. I don't know, I didn't make any outro animations or anything for this shit yet, so, I don't know. Guess we'll do this. Whoop. Hey, look at me. I'm up top now. Yeah. So I can go ahead and close, solve, and stuff and things. Glad you appreciate it, guys. Take care. Okay, bye.